Well, hello everyone, wherever you happen to be today. Or if I were playing Walter Winchell, I'd say, "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all the ships at sea." Flash. Anybody know who Walter Winchell was? If you don't know, he was a reporter, did a lot of coverage in the world of radio and some on television. If you ever watched the old TV show, The Untouchables with Elliot Ness, Walter Winchell was the narrator for that. He was a pretty big reporter back in the day, as they say. But anyway, that's a different story, and we're not here to talk about Walter much today. But I want to thank you all for being here. Our guest today is Jenna Rene Soto, and Jenna has, well, she doesn't have a very exciting life. She's only been a barrel racer, Mr. or Mrs. Oklahoma City. She's been in the military. She's written a book. So, not much. Anyway, we're really glad that Jenna consented to be with us here on Unstoppable Mindset. And I think we'll have fun for the next hour or so. So, Jenna, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on your show, and I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Well, and anything you want to talk about, we can talk about. Scandal's always a good thing, I'm sure. But anyway, that's another story too. Well, I'm glad you're here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about maybe the early Jenna growing up and some of that stuff?
Okay, so I grew up in western South Dakota on a ranch that my great granddad homesteaded, great great granddad actually, in 1909. So my family grew up raising cattle and sheep, and then we ended up getting into the buffalo industry. But my love of horses really began at an early age because we had horses to work on the ranch. In South Dakota, it snows all the time, and the snow gets so deep. A lot of the areas where the cows would go to hide out from the weather, you couldn't even access with a vehicle. So we had horses mainly to work, and my whole family ended up rodeoing, and I really just fell in love with it at an early age and continued it all the way through college and competed on the equestrian team. And then I joined the military and kind of got out of the military to pursue rodeo again and ended up as a professional barrel racer. But horses have been a really big influence on my life and a huge passion of mine since I was just barely old enough to sit up. I've been on the back of a horse.
Well, what is barrel racing? I'm not familiar with it. I'm not sure if I've heard of it or not, but I'm not familiar with it. So, what is barrel racing?
Well, barrel racing is the only women's event in the sport of rodeo. And you can think of it basically like a drag race, except instead of with cars, you've got horses. There are three barrels, and you can go around them from the left or the right first, but you make a cloverleaf pattern, and the fastest time wins. The only penalty you might have is if you tip over a barrel, you have 5 seconds. But if you are tipping over a barrel, the competition is it's so close these days that we're down to the hundredth of a second. So 5 second penalty, you're totally out.
Yeah. So that's the only women's sport. So women typically don't participate in other sports, or that's just the only exclusive women's sport.
That that's the only professional level women's sport in rodeo. There are other organizations where women can actually ride bulls and ride broncs and rope, but in the main rodeo organization, it's only the barrel racing for the women, and it is exclusive to women as well. So you won't see any male competitors, but there are other organizations that allow that crossover.
Why is that?
I think it's tradition, honestly. It's one of the oldest women's professional organizations in the country. And I think that is probably going to change in the future because, at least from my perspective, if I want to say that I'm the best in the world, I want to be competing against men, women, young and old. So I think they should do away with the age limits, first of all, and also the gender requirements. But I know that's a little bit controversial, but I think in the future we'll see more male competitors trying to get involved with this level of competition.
But I would think also that women are capable of roping and riding bulls and so on. So I'm wondering why they're.
They're fewer and further between, that's for sure. Bull
Yeah,
riding is so physically demanding. It is a very, very challenging sport, but there are opportunities for women to compete. But I think the numbers just aren't there to make it more mainstream. But there are organizations where they can.
yeah.
But I will say I don't know, but maybe one or two people that do it. And I have tried riding a bull before, not a very aggressive one, and I don't care to get back up there again because no matter what, you're coming off. Even if you make 8 seconds, you're going to hit the ground, and it is not near as soft as it looks when you see other people do it.
Yeah, the ground is not very forgiving, is it?
Oh, it's not.
Well, and I would rather make friends with an animal than ride it and get it mad at me. So I'm with you in a sense. I like horses. I've petted bulls and cows and try to be friendly to them. And so not
Yeah.
I'm not enamored with going up to one that's really likely to want to gore me.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't blame you. It is actually funny, though. A lot of the best bucking horses and bulls are really docile and pretty friendly when they're outside of the arena. And that's part of Pro Rodeo's Born to Buck program. So just like any other animal athlete, they have to instinctually want to perform at that level and have the athleticism to be able to even get the cowboy off. So not every bull is even capable
Hmm.
of doing that. And it is funny too, because if they don't want to, they won't. And there's nothing that you can really make them, try any harder than they want to. But the top pro bucking bulls and pro bucking horses, they know their job. They're very athletic and talented, and they really turn it on when the lights and the crowd are over them.
So they're smart and they know they're in a performing environment as opposed to just
Yes.
always wanting to do it. I'm sure
Yep.
there are some that always want to, but mostly
Yeah.
it's a performing thing and they're smart enough to know that.
Yep, they are, and it's so cute. Each horse, at least all of them that I've ever met, have such distinct personalities,
Yeah.
and they're almost just like a dog. If you're around them enough, you really get to know them and their preferences and their likes and dislikes, and it's really fun to get that connection with your animal.
Yeah, and that's fine. So I didn't really know that it was more of a of a sport where the animals really do know what they're supposed to do and they do it when they have to and when they don't have to they're not necessarily feeling empowered to do that. They want to visit with people.
Yep, yep, that's right.
That's cool. Well, there you go. Well, learn something about that. Well, and barrel racing that keeps you busy. So how well do you do at barrel racing?
Well, I love it so much. I've been trying my whole life, honestly, and I've won a lot, and I've had several setbacks, but it's something that I really enjoy, and the progress and the connection that I have with my horse in pursuit of greatness is what I'm truly addicted to and keep coming back to. And I've had a couple of really great horses during my lifetime, but the thing I find the most rewarding is taking a young horse and watching them grow up on my ranch and then finally being able to get to ride them when they're big enough and to see them learn and grow with you and know that they had that experience because you taught them and you gave it to them, and to see them be willing and proud of themselves, that's pretty cool to me, and that's what I really enjoy. So I'll always have horses whether I'm able to compete or not. I think I'm a lifelong horse trainer and just enjoy it so much. It's definitely something that I want to keep in my life.
Well, it's also, I would think, about building a level of trust. And the reason you can be successful with a horse or whatever is that you create and you develop that level of trust where you both know how to work with each other, you know how each other thinks. And I find that with every guide dog that I get, it's the same sort of thing. You've got to develop the relationship
Sure.
and make it work.
Yep, I can imagine it's similar. Just asking, that animal to trust you and to, take care of you as well. And something a lot of people don't think about in the rodeo world is that you're actually running full speed into an arena that you're not sure what the ground is going to be like. And there is a lot of responsibility on the horse to be able to find his footing and act quickly. And while I am hoping that we are able to turn the barrel as close as possible, if they're not able to do that because of the ground, that's where you'll see some horses kind of be a little bit wider or maybe stumble, but a lot of times they're just taking care of their rider. And so it is kind of cool how you can work together, and there's always seems like there's more to do, but having that initial trust and bond is so important because you really are asking a lot of them to go just totally full speed into arena lights and music and applause and to take care of you.
And they eat it up.
Yeah, they do. There are some that like it more than others, honestly. And just like the bucking bulls and the bucking horses, if they don't actually enjoy it, they're not going to perform well.
Yeah.
And the sport is so competitive that they've really got to love it. And you also have to truly love it. And kind of when you get to the rodeo, it's you're showcasing what you've done at home. That's the fun part, but you've got to love the whole entire process. And more of it's going to be at home working through things than it is with the fringe flying at the arena and the performance.
And again, like anything, it's a two-way trust. So you both have to trust each other and learn to work together, which is so important. And I wish more people would recognize that with their pets, that that's what it's really about. And it's about developing a deeper, true trusting relationship than most of us realize.
Yep, that is right. And I've actually, sorry,
There you go.
I've actually got a little rodeo dog that I take with me too, and he's part of the family as much as any of the horses. But I don't know that I have near the trust in him to run off or to take care of me if he's off leash. So I really admire that the dogs and the work that you do with them. That's really incredible.
Well, so you went to college, right?
Yes. Yep.
Where did you go and what did you study?
I went to South Dakota State,
Okay.
and that was part of the military. When I joined, they would pay tuition anywhere in the state that I wanted to go. So that's the college that I decided on. And I actually got a partial scholarship for the equestrian program there as well. But I ended up studying political science, and that was part of my military journey as well. I was in intelligence. So I was most interested in foreign policy and things like that, kind of in that intel avenue.
I was wondering what got you into the military. So that kind of led you into then working and being a part of the military for a while.
Yeah, I think the main draw for the military to me was to get out of the small town that I grew up in and get to see the world. And I didn't really know what career field I should go in. That was kind of by chance, but it ended up totally changing my life, and it's been a part of my life since then. And I'm really glad that that happened for me because I had no idea what intel meant, and I really didn't know a fighter jet from an aircraft carrier from anything. I just had no clue when I went in. So it was a totally eye-opening experience, but I ended up being very fortunate in finding a job that I actually do like.
So what attracted you to intelligence and how did you use that? How did it change your life?
Well, they had a signing bonus, which was very significant, especially at an age of 18, to get college paid for and have that sign-on bonus just puts you so far ahead of most of your peers financially that was truly what drew me to it. And my ASVAB scores were high enough where I did qualify. And I think that's one of the reasons why that career field was so scarce, because it is tough to get into. The training is very long, and a lot of people don't end up being good at it, even if they do qualify. So they're always looking for people who are going to be able to progress and stay in the career field a long time. But I ended up, doing 9 years in the military as an intel analyst, which is very interesting to me. And then I got out to rodeo, but ended up coming back to do surveillance and reconnaissance, which is right underneath that intel umbrella. And then any of the jobs that I would find here, in the US would be right underneath that too. And And intel is such a huge career
Yeah.
field. There's so many different ways you can go with it. One of the things I'm looking at now is human trafficking in Oklahoma, which I didn't realize was, such a big problem or a big department. But the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics has several intel analyst positions to just battle the human trafficking that's happening here, which I thought was very interesting. But
So, what makes a person really good at Intel? You said you were good at it. There are a lot of people who may qualify, but they're not really good. What does that mean?
well, I think you have to have a natural ability to make decisions without all of the information to excel in intelligence. That and being able to speak in front of, your commander or a unit and talk about what you think and why based on just the information that's given is a unique thing for a lot of people, especially somebody who's younger. So I've always been comfortable in front of a crowd. I've done, pageants and rodeo and things like that. So just the nature of being in front of a crowd isn't super intimidating to me. But once I learned, the process, I wasn't afraid to study. And once I would study enough, it gave me confidence to get up in front of people and make decisions. And I found it very rewarding once you get to actually see what those decisions mean as far as the intel cycle and the whole operation that's going on overseas. It's pretty cool to be a part of such a big thing. And I really did enjoy that. And it keeps it super interesting because the battlefield is ever changing and the enemy is ever changing and no operation is exactly the same. So it's just a super dynamic career field with actually a lot of pressure and keeps you awake.
Yeah.
Fun.
Well, I know we're all dealing with, of course, now the whole issue of a war in Iran and all that. That must be a really intelligence pressured situation because there's so much that
Yes.
can happen and go wrong and go right. But that must be a challenge.
Yeah, and it's funny, I'm not really involved anymore in
Yeah.
intelligence. So I always do wonder, what is the real picture? What are we really doing? What are we preparing for? And what's going on that the public hasn't found out about yet?
Yeah.
But it has surprised me some of the things that have come out. Just because the world that I grew up in, the internet didn't quite exist when I was going through school, and we never put anything online. Press wasn't, even something we considered or talked about. Just wasn't part of our world. So to see some of the capabilities that we're using to like find a down pilot or to go in and knock out communications and electricity, that's crazy to me that they're able to talk about that on an unclassified network. But I think it also serves a purpose just in, a show of force. And there's always more to the story than is ever, put on the news. So there's actually a lot of analysis that everybody needs to do just as far as where they get their news and trying to determine what is actually the point and what are we doing really and what are some of the outcomes. It's just a very dynamic and uncertain world to dive into.
Yeah, because I'm sure all of that is true, and there's a lot that we don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
to put it this way, it'd be nice to be a fly on the wall and know some of those things. But at the same time, I
Yep.
also know why not everything is put out, and then that's fine.
Yep.
Um, there are things that really shouldn't necessarily be disclosed. The other side of it is though that people want to disclose or they want everything to be disclosed, and that just doesn't work all the time. Sometimes we really need to learn to respect silence. There's value in that.
Yep. Absolutely. And you can't give away all of your capabilities or it changes the battlefield entirely just in that
Yeah.
the rest of the world will be prepared to deal with us. And we
Yeah.
always, I think, should have an upper hand and keep our cards kind of close to our chest. But at the end of the day, those decisions are so far out of my hands. And it's funny, even when I was, actively working in a combat zone, they would usually only tell us just enough where you can succeed in your role. You didn't necessarily know the full picture or get to see outside of, your little tunnel vision. But the people in charge, you really had to have faith and trust in them and that what you're doing greater good and serves a purpose that we believe in. And it's interesting to think back now on, my earlier days in Intel. You have no idea what's going on truly and how many different working pieces there are. And you're just doing your best to get this briefing out, but it's such a big, wheelhouse, and there's so many parts that it's a little overwhelming actually to think they put 18-year-olds out into that
Yeah.
and expect them to thrive. But
Well, the other part of it is that um, just focusing on what you are supposed to do probably makes a lot of sense because you don't need to worry about everything. So you were. I didn't get the last of what you were saying.
I was saying that, in your career field, you try to do the very best of the things that you can control, and you have to have a lot of faith in your team, the guy sitting next to you, that they're going to also do their best. And, at the end of the day, you can't worry about the factors that you can't control. And that's something that's very challenging in Intel to realize and to sit with, because there are so many dynamic moving pieces that it will make you crazy if you try to read every single thing or know every single thing. Um, and that kind of goes with rodeo too. You try to be as prepared as you can, but there's a lot you can't control. The more comfortable you can be in that, the better operator that you would be.
Well, one of the mantras that I have lived by, especially since September 11th, and have talked about on this podcast some, is that whole concept. Don't worry about what you can't control. Focus on what you can. And one of the reasons that that's so important is, especially for people who don't really know how to do this well, if you just worry about everything and you what if everything to death, you're going to create so much fear in your life, you won't really be able to cope with anything. And we all ought to learn to just focus on the things over which we really have control. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be aware of other things, but we need to learn not to worry about them and only worry about the things over which we have control, because those are the things that will really be able to help you deal with any fear that you may have, and also deal with being able to control fear and not focus on stuff that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And it's
It is.
it's sometimes easier said than done, but
Well,
I
it is.
definitely agree.
Well, it is. It is something that one can learn, however, how to do. You can learn to control fear. You can learn to deal with just the things over which you have control, and learn not to what if, or not to what if in an emotional way the things that you can't. I gave a speech a couple of years ago to the Business Continuity Institute. And business continuity, as the people who are in it describe it, they're the what if people. They're the ones that are always looking to analyze and consider what could happen to their business or the business they work for that could cause it to crash or not succeed or have a problem. And they're the ones that have to put in
Hmm.
place the things that will allow a business to continue. So like with the wars over in the Middle East and so on, businesses over there have to deal with finding ways to have business continuity, whether it's backing up computer data, other forms of communications or whatever. And they've got business continuity people to help them do that. But the reality
Hmm.
is that those business continuity people have been thinking about that for a while. The difference is they don't get emotionally involved and they don't let it worry them, because all they can do is deal with what they can deal with, and they recognize that.
Hmm.
And it's really so important to focus on the things over which you really do have control, and the rest, even though you may be aware of it, you need to learn to filter it out and not let it worry you, because that's just going to drive you crazy. And the
Yeah.
reality is, like, over 95% of the things we worry about will never happen. And there are things that we don't have any control over anyway.
That is very true. Yep, that is very true.
So you, you eventually did get kind of out of the military, but you've lived a lot of different lives. You've been in the rodeo, military, real estate involvement, and author. What connects all of that?
Well, I think that, I'm always interested in progressing and working towards something. So if I feel like one avenue isn't serving me anymore, I'm not afraid to pivot and try something new. And I think I just have the personality type where I want to, live a meaningful life and create impact. And whether it's rodeo or real estate, I've always enjoyed giving back and sharing with people who are like me or people who are on a similar journey, some of the lessons that I had learned along the way to help them kind of skip through some steps if that's at all possible. But I know when I've really made the most progress, it was because of the team that I had around me, or a coach, or a mentor, or some type of educational content that I got a hold of that really catapulted me, or at least got me into the state where I could find the answers, myself. But just having an environment where it encourages you to do more, be more, that's something that that you're called to. Getting around the right people can make a huge difference. And I think it's fun to pursue different things that we're interested in, whether it's career related or just something because you love it, like rodeo. I don't know that I'll ever be just a full-time cowgirl again, but I love it so much that I've found a way to make it part of my life. And I think that's important for people to know too, because a lot of people, their passion isn't maybe going to make them money and they may not be able to pay the bills doing it, but that doesn't mean that you can't, fill your life with things that you enjoy. And so it's been a difficult, balance to try to figure out how it's all going to work together. But I really do enjoy different facets in different areas. And I feel like if I had more time, I would pick up even more hobbies, but really maxed out with what we've got going on currently.
How did Mrs. Oklahoma come into it?
Well, I grew up doing rodeo queen pageants, and it was actually one of the things I wrote about in my book because it was the first time I really faced, loss and judgment and the feeling of you just aren't good enough and there are no other options was to compete at Miss Radio America and to not win. And I had set my sights and my goals on that since I was just a little girl. And it's unique in the rodeo world because you only get to try one time. And there's no other organizations, there's no other options actually. So it's just heartbreaking to realize that dream is, that dream is put to bed and to figure out what's next ended up led to other pageant systems and other ways to give back and make a difference. And having been Miss Rodeo, I know that with a crown and with that visibility is a huge avenue to make a difference. It gets you in a lot of the right rooms. It gives you credibility, and it allows you, the connections and the support to do whatever it is that you are passionate about, and more so in the pageant world than the rodeo world. Because the rodeo world, your job is to represent professional rodeo for that sport and to advocate for that organization. But in the pageant world, you can pick. You can actually go after whatever platform means the most to you, and the year is yours to do with it what you will. And so with my book coming out, it just seemed like an easy no-brainer to kind of combine the two. And it's allowed me to go to different schools and speak, to get on different podcasts, and it's been a really great combo. So the book that I've written will be, further than just this year, but Mrs. Oklahoma City is a year-long title, and I'll get to go compete for Mrs. Oklahoma here in about 2 months.
Wow. Well, that'll be kind of fun. Do you
Yeah,
obviously you enjoy the pageant world some.
I do. And actually, even if you don't end up winning the ultimate title, it's so fun to be around like-minded women that are, similar in age or also live in your state, because those are the people that I really enjoy collaborating with, connecting with, and end up being lifelong friends with. I remember, when I was Miss Rodeo, I was like 2013, I want to say. So it's been several years ago, but the girls that I served with that year are actually some of my best friends to this day. And I don't know that we ever would have crossed paths otherwise, but to get in a room with other high achievers that have similar interests, that is worth it in my eyes, even if you don't take home the actual crown. So it's fun and I love it, and it just seems like a really good fit. And I'm glad that they don't put age limits on it across the board because I'm married now and I'm definitely older than, winning as a teenager or even early 20s. So it's fun to get to do it at this age. And I actually think it's more beneficial because I have a lot more to say now and I have a lot more lessons and that I've learned, a little bit more perspective and just an overall better package, I think.
Is there a lot of politics in those contests, or do you find
Unfortunately,
it? There
yes.
is, yeah.
Yes, there definitely is. And it just depends, what system and honestly what year. And that's what drew me to barrel racing because it's no one's opinion. It is
Yeah.
against the clock. There's there's not a lot of room for excuses. You're either the fastest that day or you're not. So I do love barrel racing for that reason. But I also love what pageants bring. So I'm still active in both. But there are definite pros and cons.
How do they measure the time in barrel racing? And she said it's down to hundredths of a second with
Mhm.
all the movements of the animals. How do they measure the time so accurately?
Well, there's an electric eye that senses when the horse's nose crosses it. So
Ah,
that starts the clock digitally. So there is no room for error. So it used to be a flag, and a judge would stand at the line and try to accurately throw the flag down, and then the timer would stop by a secretary holding a clock in their hand. But the competition has just gotten so close that even to do that would be so inaccurate. So the electric eye is awesome, and they've got so much technology now that they can even overlay your run with the winner and see where they were faster. Maybe it's around the first whirl, maybe it's around second, and segment it down so you can break up, your time to first or your time to second, and see, really where you need to make improvements or where you got beat. And it's ever so slight. I mean, just a little hesitation and you're out.
yeah. Fascinating. It's
Mhm.
interesting, and I've never attended a rodeo. I know it's a lot more visual than probably typically I am used to, but it would be fun to to do it one of these days. So we'll have to come and watch you in Oklahoma.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times the announcers do such a good job
Ah,
at
good
explaining it
point.
because they never know exactly what the crowd is. So they always do a good job of explaining exactly what's going on in the arena and like what the penalties might be or who this cowgirl is. So it is enjoyable just to listen to as well.
Cool. Well, so you are married. You talked a little bit about that, and your husband and you met in Afghanistan. Tell me about that.
We did. The romantic city of Bagram.
There you are.
Uh, yeah. We both did the same job as contractors, but my husband was actually one of the guys who would be on the ground doing more of the hands-on part of the operation. So it was cool to get to fly with him eventually because he had a lot to teach me, and I definitely became a student of his and asked a lot of questions, and we really connected in the sky. And with the platform that I was on, we would be up there for several hours, and that environment is secure, so you can't have your phone or music or movies or things like that. So you really just have your crew to talk to, and it was just him and I really, and we got to know each other for several months with no distractions of the civilian world, no makeup or horses or social media. So I just felt like our connection was so raw and honest that we just, it was pretty simple. And the day that we met, we pretty much became best friends and inseparable since then. So it's fun for him to get to come to Oklahoma and see a lot more about my background once we got out of Afghanistan. We definitely come from different upbringings. He grew up in the city and hadn't really been on a horse or even around horses until he met me. But now he's got some boots and a tractor. It's funny to see the change. But yeah, we both bring different things to the table, but found a lot of similarities and ended up both really enjoying real estate. And now what we do full time is flip and renovate houses here in Oklahoma. So that
Mm.
keeps us very busy.
How long have you been married?
We've been married for 3 years and we've been flipping full time for 1 year. And I will say that if you are ever trying to test your marriage, just go ahead and buy a house together and see if you can renovate it, because it is a lot of collaboration and uncertainty and problem solving, honestly, at the end of the day, and a lot of hard work. But it's ended up bringing us a whole lot closer because we've been able to see some of the fruits of our labor and make some really great deals happen. And we love it, just in that we can kind of control our schedule and get to be home all the time. So we're definitely going to keep going on the real estate path.
My wife and I were married for 40 years before she passed in November of 2022, and we bought over our lifetime several houses. We were pretty aligned on all of that. And one of the things about Karen is that she was in a wheelchair her whole life. So a lot of what we did was based around either finding a house that we could modify to be accessible for her, or what we liked better was when we could find property and build a house. Because if you build a house and you make the house accessible as you're building it, it doesn't cost anything to do that. You design in lower counters, you design wider doors, you design a level entryways, and so on. Whereas if you buy a house and then you modify it, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we had a couple of times where we knew we were going to be in an area where we couldn't find property to build a home. And when it came down to looking with real estate agents to find a home that we could modify, the problem is with some of them is they just didn't get it. They took us to a house and we said, this is why this won't work. This is why that won't work. And then the next house they took us to was the same thing. And they said, well, this is different. Well, no, it's not. It's the same thing. And so it does get to be a challenge.
It's hard to come by, honestly. And it's such a big market. Everybody's a realtor these days or knows somebody, but it is definitely a skill to have a good realtor on your side. And we've definitely learned that through selling different houses, because there's a lot of different ones, and definitely know how to appreciate a good one.
Yeah. And we were, sometimes it took a little effort, but we were able to find good realtors eventually that we could work with. And then you're right. They're such a blessing. We had to go through some bad ones, not bad ones, but just lack of perceptive. I won't say they're bad because they probably did all right, but they didn't get what we needed. But we learned a lot and had a lot of fun. So we were pretty aligned on what we needed in a house, because a lot of it was based on accessibility for Karen. Because for me, it's not as magical a kind of thing. But by the same token, we learned a lot and it worked well. But when we could build a house like this home I'm in now, we built in 2016. We moved down to Southern California in 2014 and lived in an apartment for almost 2.5 years. And it wasn't overly accessible, but it was accessible enough for Karen to be able to do most things in it. But we were waiting to get a construction loan, and then we got it. And by June or July of 2016, they started building or working on the house. Maybe it was like May of 2016. And I remember one day, I think it was in July, we came over from the apartment and we're watching as they put the big trusses up on the roof, all the big beams and all that. We just kind of watched that for a while, but they did make it accessible, and that's what we needed, which was cool.
Well, good. Yeah, that's such a feat to do all of that. And I've definitely gained some appreciation for contractors and people who work in the houses and on the houses, because it is such a fun experience for every homeowner. But to be new in it, there's just so much to learn.
Yeah.
It's a huge world and a huge undertaking to build, for sure, but even to own a home. And it is fun and very rewarding when we get to, make somebody's dream home come to life, or to be able to do the deal with them and help them along their journey. And I think even if you're not, innately interested in real estate, it is something that everybody should consider, because you do have to have somewhere to live for your whole life. So to learn about it and to make a proactive decision rather than kind of reactive is fun. And I like sharing our real estate journey with people from like the rodeo world or the military world because, they end up, thinking maybe this is something I'd like to do or learn more about when initially they just probably thought, I'll just rent and see how it goes. But there's a lot of value in buying early, and especially in the military, there's some cool programs that can really help the service members out and get into a house.
Yeah. Well, for you, being in the rodeo world, and I would think in the military and intelligence and so on, you have had a lot of issues dealing with pressure and identity and resilience and so on. What have you learned from these different kinds of environments that you've been in that really helps you do better at coping with pressure and being more resilient?
Well, the military is definitely a great teacher for a lot of those things. And that was kind of the first time that I had to ask myself, who are you? Who are you without the military? And for a long time, I thought that was a barrel racer until that was taken. And then I was forced to look a little bit deeper and figure out, what makes me happy? What makes me tick? What do I want with my life? Where would I like to live? Things like that. And I realized that a lot of it wasn't tangible. It's not necessarily the things that you have, but more the things you're surrounded with and how you feel on a daily basis. And for me, it always ended up being with horses and connecting with animals and being out in nature and having a little bit of land and kind of getting away from the hustle and bustle of the city. But it took several years to learn that about myself, and I had to, really see the world and try out a lot of different roles before I kind of feel like I figured myself out. I got to know myself a little bit better. But pivoting and getting that identity taken away from you that you really just resonate with, like I'm a military member or I'm a professional cowgirl, to take that away can be life changing. And it can be very shocking for people emotionally and lead to a lot of depression or questions. And the thing that the military, teaches us all the time, and I didn't realize it without some reflection, but is to shift. Flexibility is the key to air power. So when something doesn't work out, that doesn't mean that you failed, and it doesn't mean that you need to quit. You just got to readjust, reattack, get a better plan, and continue on. So I know the military teaches that without people realizing it, but that is a lifelong skill, and it's a skill for people who aren't even in the military, to pick up on and to practice, because you can use it so many times throughout your life and in different scenarios too. But for me, the craziest thing ever was to think that I'm no longer in the military or I'm no longer a barrel racer, and to ask just, who are you? Who are you really? And what makes you happy?
Have you ever had a time where you kind of really hit rock bottom and how did that all go?
Yeah. Yes, I definitely have. And I go into a lot of detail about it in my first book. But it was, when I ended up quitting the military or getting out to pursue pro rodeo, I thought that was my fairy tale ending. I thought that was my Cinderella story. I thought that, this was the time that I was going to make it. But instead, I ended up spending all of my money, over leveraging my assets, and totally going broke. And my horse ended up getting hurt. So to me, it was devastating in a lot of ways. And I felt like I didn't have any options. And, when that state, it's so hard to see past this year or this hurdle or this, difficulty. But what I did was to go back to Afghanistan, to go back to the work that I know that I was good at, that actually does pay, and give it all up. I basically had to strip away everything, that I loved about my life and kind of start over. And the main thing that helped me was that stability of a long-term job where, in the military, they take a lot of care of you. They give you a bed, they give you food, they give you a job and a paycheck, and it might not be the most glamorous or most fun thing. And there's definitely some sacrifice that goes into deploying long term. I think I was there initially for about a year, and that was really hard for me to do. But it gave me that stability and the time and the space to just start over and think about what exactly I wanted to do with my life and where we could go from here. And I felt like I truly, was at my rock bottom. I felt like I didn't have a purpose anymore or anything to strive for, but that wasn't the case at all. And so it was a good experience. Looking back, I wouldn't want to go through it again. And I would hope, others can pick themselves up quicker than I was able to. But yeah, that's a definite lesson that I wanted to share with others. And I know a lot of people feel that to some degree when they go through major life changes. And that's a lot about what my book is based on. And definitely the first one that is titled Not Enough, or just that feeling that you failed and that you're not good enough. And maybe, your whole world is crumbling, but there is a way forward. There is a path, and there's different tools you can use, and you can get back up again.
Well, you talk about not enough a lot. Where did that belief first show up in your life?
Well, I think it was ingrained honestly at an early age, and maybe people don't realize it, but the feelings of lack and of scarcity, you pick up throughout your lifetime. And for me, it just became too heavy to even hold, and I just completely broke down. But I think that, whether it's a teacher that tells you, you're not a smart kid. It's, spelling isn't your thing, math isn't your thing. They kind of plant these little seeds of doubt along our lives. And maybe it's a parent or maybe it's a friend or, a lot of people go through a lot of trauma when they break up with a loved one or a partner, especially for the first time. And they start to maybe believe those things that they're being told, or they let the doubt get louder than their self-confidence and their self-worth. And for me, it just slowly chipped away little by little until it just was all that I knew. And I ended up just totally believing that, yeah, I don't deserve to be out rodeoing. I don't have any worth. There's nothing that I bring to the table. I just completely shut down and felt just totally not enough. And that's not the case. And even if you feel like that, the sun will shine again if you allow it. And it's a mental cage that I think we build for ourselves. Um, but just kind of facing that and realizing that you're not alone in those thoughts, and that even some of the greats, even some of the best athletes you'll ever follow, or some of the people on social media that just look like they have it all together, that their life is perfect. We all have our ups and downs, and we all have battles and struggles, and not everybody shows that. And that's kind of the thing I didn't realize when I had first gotten to that place, is that I thought maybe I was alone, or my story was somehow the worst. And that's totally not the case. And there's different things you can do to kind of pull yourself out of that mental state. But definitely being open to learning from others and collaborating and honestly giving back. Those are some of the things that I talk about in my book that helped me, but I maybe didn't realize it at the time. But looking back now, I can definitely point to a couple of different things that definitely helped.
To turn it around.
Yep,
Yeah. So you said your first book. Have you written other books since?
I have. I've actually written 4. And part of the reason I wrote 4 was because I was writing for several years. I think it was 7 years ago that I had the concept for the book. And I wanted it to be a 4-part book, but it just got so big that it turned into 4 different books. So the first one is Not Enough, Had Enough, Am Enough, and then Never Enough was the last one. And
Okay.
they all kind of talk about different things, but the central theme is similar throughout all of them. So you can definitely enjoy each book individually, but it is more fun, I think, to read the series. And I really do think they get better as I go. I'm excited for the first one, but I'm the most excited for the last one. And they are all written, and I plan to release them 1 month in between. So I just want to get it out into the world and get it off my desk because it's been here for 7 years.
So Not Enough is released?
It will be released April 23rd. And then a
Okay.
month after that will be the second, and then a month, and then another month, and then they'll all be out.
Wow. Well, congratulations. Are you
Yeah,
self-publishing or
thank you.
are you self-publishing or do you have a publisher?
I'm doing a hybrid
Ah,
publishing.
okay.
and I looked at a couple different options. I wasn't sure which way to go, and it's certainly overwhelming as a first time author, but I thought, I definitely could use some help as far as the admin side goes or
Yeah.
making sure everything's set up correctly. But I know I do have an audience that wants to hear my story and maybe wonders where I went as far as pro rodeoing or what happened to my horse really when he got hurt. And hopefully picked up a few new listeners too that haven't been with me as long. But yeah, I think that it'll be a good combo to just do a hybrid model.
So how is your horse?
Well, I still have him. That was one of the things that I refused to do was basically sell out, even though, I had trained him. He was worth a lot at the height of his career, and I turned down a lot of money for him just because I feel like I owe him my life, my career, and a lot of my happiness. So he will always have a place in my pasture, but he will never probably be sound enough to run consistently again. He had what's called an navicular, and easiest way to describe that is basically the really small bone in his foot kind of looks like Swiss cheese. And on the edges of the bone, it kind of sticks out. And the more that he uses it, it kind of severs a really important tendon in his leg. So as he runs more or strains himself too hard, he'll get sore. And so he's just going to stay at my house and ease around, eat a lot of hay, keep the others in line.
Do you ride him every so often?
I don't, just because I don't want to put any pressure.
Yeah, pressure on his foot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I do what's called liberty with him. So it's where he doesn't have any halter or saddle or anything on, and I'm also on the ground, and we just work together.
You take a
on
walk.
the ground and as fast as he would want to go. Yep.
You
and
take a walk.
His
Yeah.
injury is kind of in his front feet. He likes to come up off the ground, so I'm working on teaching him to rear up as a trick.
Well, there you go. Well, that's cool. How many horses do you have?
I have 5 with one on the way.
Well, there you go. Now, is your husband in the rodeo circuit as well anywhere?
Definitely not. He does
Okay.
not prefer to ride if he can help it, but he is really handy and can do everything that I would need to take care of him. But he prefers to be inside a car with a lot more horsepower where I just only need one.
Well, maybe you'll still convert him at some point to be a little bit more horse oriented.
Yeah.
Well, you say that most people tend to operate from the wrong identity. What do you mean by that, and how did you shift out of it, whatever it is?
Well, I think growing up, you get this idea of who you are and associate it with a label. And for most people, it's what their profession is. And so it's really jarring when you take that away. And just operating from a place of tangible assets or a job that you do, that actually isn't who you are. It is what you do. But to look a little bit deeper and figure out what makes you you is kind of the theme of the identity first framework. And I think that it becomes evident later on in life if you try to figure that out. But I think a lot of people are unhappy and they realize that maybe in a job that they don't like, and they realize they've done it for 20 years, or they wake up with a partner that isn't serving them, or they're just unhappy. And I think a lot of that has to do with their identity and realizing that they are enough, in this job, without this job, with this partner, or without. And the thing that makes you you actually can't be taken away, only if you let it. And it's just building that mental, resilience and confidence to understand that no matter what setback you're looking at, you can rise again, because nobody is going to define you by something silly like a job or even a title beside your name. You're much more than that, much deeper than that. And the passions, the things that make you happy, chase those things and figure out a way to put those in your life consistently and to progress towards those things is what I've found makes me the most fulfilled in my day to day.
You've talked about coaching and mentoring, and you clearly value that, why is trying to do stuff alone not a good idea?
Well, you don't have to spend so much time figuring things out the hard way. You can actually just find somebody who's been down that path before and take their advice and go where they point you. And I think it's really undervalued, but the people who aren't quite there yet, but they're a few steps ahead of where you are, those are the most valuable teachers to me because they remember that struggle that you're experiencing, right now. They remember what it's like and they have that next step or however they figured it out. They've got it in their back pocket now. And it's not really something that you need to pay for. There's a lot of mentors that are in your community or in your network, or they should be, that you can reach out to. And I think a lot of people, when they're not taught to be a coach, they don't feel like they should be. But I've found so much value in giving back when I'm not the expert yet. But I can tell you how I've gotten to where I am because I just lived it. And those are the people that I want to encourage to reach back and to mentor and to help. And I've found it very fulfilling to be able to help somebody else. And it's not too much skin off my back to help you out because I know how to do it, but it can make a world of difference for somebody who's struggling or somebody who wants to get where you are. And I think we're oftentimes too humble to think that, people do look up to you, even if you haven't made it yet, even if you're not entirely where you want to be. There are people who look to you as someone they want to be like and to reach back for them and send the elevator back down. That makes life so much more fulfilling.
Well, so you do real estate, you flip houses and so on. Do you also coach? Can people hire you as a coach?
Well, I'm working on building my coaching leg of my website. I do have some coaching options more in the horse space. But my husband and I have learned so much about real estate that we are always available through, email or DM. We don't have an official program yet, but we would like to move towards that. But we are absolutely involved in different coaching programs in real estate. If you're interested at all, we can show you where we've learned, and you can also just reach out to us for some tips and tricks too, because we'd love to connect. We'd love to help you if you're interested in some of the same things that we are doing.
Me, I'll be interested when I find out that your husband rides a horse and is in the rodeo business.
You made me waiting a while. I don't know if
I
I'm that far
know.
anytime
I
soon.
know.
No, it's
Yeah.
so funny that the last time you rode a horse, I was busy trying to take a picture of him, and his horse ended up laying down in a lake. And I could have seen it coming if I was paying better attention, but I was trying to take his picture. So he had a couple boots full of water and a ruined cell phone. So I don't know if we're going to get him back on anytime soon, but I promise to pay better attention this day.
Stay away from the water.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one effort. What do you say to people who say, "Well, I'm too old to change direction and do things differently"?
Well, I would say that's a really poor attitude because there's so many examples around us of people who have succeeded when they only started at 45 or, 60. And it just depends what industry you're in as to who you can look to be an example. But even if you don't have an example, why not you? I think the biggest key to success is putting the right people and mentors in place to ensure that the path you're on is correct and kind of help you over some of those hurdles. But no matter what it is, you're still able to pivot and go in that direction and find a way to make it a part of your life, even if that might have to change just a little bit. Like in the rodeo world, you can still have horses till you're super old. Like I think the oldest gal to make it to the finals was 62 or 64. So don't be intimidated. There's always somebody a little bit older and a little bit busier than you that's making it happen. So don't be afraid to think, why not you? And just go after the dreams, because if you don't even try, you're definitely not going to get there. I think you'll find along the way that the progress you're going to make and the friends you make along that journey is actually what you're after anyway, not necessarily the goal or the buckle or winning the rodeo, but to train a great horse or to meet some people along the way that you're going to be lifelong friends with, that's the stuff that I'm chasing, and I definitely have realized that over the last couple of years.
Well, if somebody says to you, I really just feel stuck or I'm behind, what would you advise them to do? It sort of relates to what you just said, but still fair question to ask.
Yeah, I would say you've got to change your state, and that may look different just depending on the person. But if you can get in an environment where you feel a little bit more empowered, you feel a little more optimistic, then you can start finding the answers for yourself. And it may be to go to a seminar, to, go to a meetup, get around other high achievers that are doing what you want to do. Or it may just be calling a friend who's uplifting, who asks you the right questions and provokes you to really explore a little bit deeper in your mind as to what is it that is causing you to shut down? Like, what is it truly? What are you afraid of? Is it, judgment by others? Is that why you don't want to try? Or what are you truly scared of? And to face that head on and to put a name on it, a lot of times you realize it's not so scary and
Right.
not the end all be all. And to just kind of work through it one day at a time. Just don't expect to go 0 to 100 overnight. There's a lot to be said for showing up consistently and just making incremental progress over time. A lot of people are so impatient and they want it all right now, or they're comparing their year one to somebody else's year 20. But just realizing, in the beginning, you're not going to be very good at whatever it is, and that's expected. That's okay. But just showing up every day for several years, you're going to pass a lot of people because there's just so much impatience these days. The way the internet, advertises, and the hustle culture we've got, I think there's a lot of underappreciation for commitment and hard work and just putting in the time.
If people want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
You can find me on any platform by just searching my full name, Jenna Rene Soto. And that's my email as well, Jenna Rene Soto at Gmail, and also my website.
Just to play safe, can you spell all that? Jenna Rene Soto.
Sure. It's Jenna, Rene, Rene, Soto, Soto.
Okay. So Jenna Rene Soto at gmail.com or on any of the platforms like LinkedIn and so on.
Yep.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. This has been a lot of fun. We've been doing this for over an hour. Can you believe it?
Oh, excellent. No, that actually flew by.
It did. Well, I want to thank you. And I want to thank all of you for being out there and listening and watching the podcast. Love to hear from you. Please feel free to email me at speaker@michaelhingson.com. That's SPEAKER at MICHAELHINGSON.com. Love it if you give us a review. Please review the podcast. People who might be interested in checking out the podcast, always love to see reviews. And for all of you, Jenna, including you, if you can think of anyone else who ought to be a guest on Unstoppable Mindset, I'd love it if you'd introduce us. And for all of you, please feel free to do that. We're always looking for folks. But Jenna, I want to thank you again. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Michael. It was an honor to be on, and it's so fun to get to chat with you.
If you're ready to go deeper into the ideas that shape how we see ourselves and others, I have a free gift for you. Head over to michaelhingson.com and download my free ebook, Blinded by Fear. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep choosing to live with an unstoppable mindset.